A single lie, spoken in panic before noon, should have disappeared into the noise of an ordinary day. Instead, it became the one sentence that turned a quiet maid's simple life upside down. By lunchtime, the most feared man in the city had learned her name. By mid-afternoon, he was standing at the front gate of the estate where she worked, refusing to leave. Everyone believed he had come to punish her. Nobody imagined that the frightened young woman who claimed to have a boyfriend had unknowingly awakened something inside a man whose heart had been buried beneath years of violence, betrayal, and loneliness. If you believe that kindness can change even the hardest heart, that forgiveness is stronger than revenge, and that everyone deserves a second chance, please take a moment to like this video, leave a thoughtful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel. Every act of support helps our family continue sharing emotional stories that remind us compassion is never wasted. Maren Holloway had spent most of her 24 years believing that the safest way to survive was to become invisible. She worked as a maid inside one of the city's most luxurious private estates, owned by wealthy investors who rarely noticed the people polishing their floors or preparing their rooms. She never complained, never argued, and never expected life to reward honesty. After growing up in foster homes where promises were broken more often than they were kept, she had learned that silence protected her better than courage ever could. Her dream was painfully simple. She wanted enough savings to buy a tiny cottage outside the city where flowers replaced traffic, where mornings began with birds instead of shouting, and where she could finally feel that she belonged somewhere. On an unusually bright morning, while cleaning a guest suite, Maren crossed paths with a wealthy visitor whose reputation frightened every employee. His name was Alaric Voss, a businessman whose success was matched only by the terrifying stories whispered about him. Newspapers called him a financial genius. Rumors called him something far darker. Nobody could prove anything, yet powerful people lowered their voices whenever his name entered a conversation. His calm expression hid an unreadable mind, and those who disappointed him rarely received another opportunity. When Alaric unexpectedly walked into the hallway while Maren carried fresh linens, he paused for the briefest moment. He noticed the kindness in her tired eyes, the careful way she greeted every worker with respect, and the quiet dignity she carried despite her modest uniform. It was a look he could not explain, but it lingered longer than either of them expected. Later that morning, another employee cornered Maren in the laundry room. The woman had been relentlessly trying to introduce her to wealthy clients in exchange for expensive favors. Maren politely refused every time. That day the pressure became unbearable. Desperate to escape the conversation forever, she blurted out the first excuse that entered her mind. She claimed she already had a devoted boyfriend waiting for her after work. The lie seemed harmless. It ended the uncomfortable conversation immediately. She believed nobody else had heard it. She was wrong. One of Alaric's senior security managers had overheard the conversation while checking the estate's surveillance equipment. Assuming the information might be important, he casually mentioned that the quiet maid already belonged to someone. For reasons even Alaric could not understand, disappointment settled inside him with unexpected force. He had spent years believing emotions were dangerous weaknesses. Yet the thought of another man making Maren smile left him strangely unsettled. Most people in his position would have forgotten about it before lunch. Alaric did not. Instead, curiosity grew stronger than reason. He returned to the estate under the excuse of discussing business investments, but everyone noticed that his attention wandered toward the housekeeping staff instead of the conference room. He quietly observed Maren helping an elderly gardener lift heavy flower pots despite being exhausted herself. He watched her comfort a frightened child visiting one of the estate's guests after the little girl scraped her knee. She expected nothing in return. She simply believed helping people mattered. For the first time in many years, Alaric questioned the life he had built. His wealth purchased everything except peace. His influence demanded respect but never affection. His power surrounded him with people who feared disappointing him rather than people who genuinely cared whether he smiled. Maren possessed none of his riches, yet she carried something he had not seen in decades. She possessed kindness untouched by ambition. Unable to understand his own feelings, Alaric began finding harmless reasons to visit the estate during daylight hours. Each visit lasted only minutes, yet the employees grew increasingly nervous. Rumors spread quickly that the powerful businessman had developed an unsettling interest in the young maid. Marin noticed his presence too. Every time she looked up from polishing furniture or arranging fresh flowers, she found him somewhere nearby. He never behaved disrespectfully. He never threatened her. Yet his silent attention left her heart racing with fear. She became convinced that her lie had somehow reached him. Believing honesty was the only escape, she finally requested permission to speak privately with him in one of the estate's sunlit gardens. With trembling hands and tears threatening to appear, Marin admitted everything. There was no boyfriend. There had never been one. She had invented the story simply to avoid unwanted attention from another employee. She apologized repeatedly, expecting anger or humiliation. Instead, Alaric surprised everyone, including himself. For the first time in years, he laughed softly. Not because her fear amused him, but because her honesty arrived even though she believed it might destroy her future. He admitted that hearing about her imaginary boyfriend had unsettled him far more than it should have. The confession embarrassed him. Powerful men were not supposed to admit confusion, yet there he stood beneath warm afternoon sunlight, unable to hide the truth from a woman who cleaned hotel rooms for a living. Marin remained cautious. She had heard enough stories about influential men to know that charm could disappear without warning. She explained gently that admiration alone could never build trust. Trust required consistency, respect, patience. The words lingered in Alaric's thoughts long after he returned to his office. For years, people obeyed him because they feared consequences. Nobody had ever asked him to become better. The following weeks transformed both of them in unexpected ways. Instead of sending expensive gifts, Alaric quietly funded scholarships for children employed around the estate whose families struggled financially. Instead of demanding attention, he volunteered resources to renovate the aging community center where many workers gathered after their shifts. Instead of using influence to impress Marin, he chose actions that helped strangers who would never know his name. Marin noticed. Not because he announced these changes, but because lives around her slowly improved. The gardener finally received life-saving medical treatment. The cafeteria staff gained safer equipment. The neighborhood library reopened after years of neglect. People whispered that someone powerful had quietly chosen generosity over publicity. Months earlier, nobody would have imagined those acts connected to the feared businessman. Yet old enemies rarely accepted personal growth without resistance. Several rivals who benefited from Alaric's ruthless reputation viewed his changing priorities as weakness. They attempted to manipulate public opinion by spreading false stories claiming Marin was secretly controlling him for financial gain. Reporters surrounded the estate during broad daylight, eager to create scandal from ordinary kindness. The accusations devastated Marin. She had spent her entire life trying to avoid attention. Now strangers questioned her integrity without knowing anything about her sacrifices. Believing she had become a burden, she quietly prepared a resignation letter. When Alaric learned about her decision, he did something nobody expected. He refused to protect himself by sacrificing her reputation. Instead, he publicly accepted responsibility. He openly acknowledged that knowing Marin had forced him to confront the emptiness of his own choices. He admitted that genuine strength was measured not by fear but by the ability to change after recognizing past mistakes. The honesty shocked the city. Some mocked him. Others doubted his sincerity. But countless ordinary people recognized something extraordinary. Real transformation always carries a cost. It demands humility powerful enough to survive public judgment. Inspired by his courage, several former associates came forward with charitable donations for local housing projects, hospitals, and youth programs. One sincere decision began influencing hundreds of lives. Marin realized that her greatest fear had accidentally created hope far beyond herself. She withdrew her resignation. Not because she suddenly believed life would become easy, but because she understood that running away would only allow lies to win. Together, they continued serving the community without seeking applause. Their friendship deepened slowly, built through ordinary afternoons spent organizing food drives, repairing playgrounds, visiting elderly residents, and encouraging struggling families. They discovered that trust grows quietly through countless small decisions rather than dramatic promises. Alaric eventually understood why he could never leave Marin alone after hearing about her imaginary boyfriend. It had never truly been about romance. It was because she represented the life he secretly wished he had lived all along. She reminded him that compassion required more courage than intimidation. That forgiveness demanded greater strength than revenge. That every human being deserved the opportunity to become better than yesterday. Years later, people rarely spoke about the frightening rumors that once surrounded his name. Instead, children laughed inside community centers he helped build. Families found shelter because businesses he supported invested in neighborhoods instead of exploiting them. Employees who once feared powerful people discovered leaders capable of listening. As for Marin, she finally purchased the little cottage she had dreamed about since childhood. The garden overflowed with colorful flowers, just as she had imagined. It became a place where neighbors gathered, lonely people found friendship, and hope quietly grew one ordinary afternoon at a time. Before we reach the end of this journey, we'd love to hear from you. Please leave a meaningful comment sharing whether you believe one honest act of kindness can truly change even the hardest heart, or if you've ever seen someone completely transform because another person refused to give up on them. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. Remember that one fearful lie may begin a story, but truth, compassion, forgiveness, and patient love have the power to rewrite its ending. Sometimes the person who refuses to leave your life is not there to control your future, but to remind you that even the most broken hearts can learn to choose kindness over fear, and that hope always shines brightest in the full light of day.